Welcome to Half an Hour with Leslie. I'm Leslie Gabriele. It's great to see you back here again for episode 3. I want to introduce my guest today, Joel Kaplan. Joel, a good friend, also a near-death experiencer, and he's going to be talking about the near-death experience. He's got quite the story to tell, so let me start by introducing Joel. Hi, Joel.
Hi. Thank you, Leslie. Pleasure to be here with you and everybody else in this world.
In this world.
I probably start by telling you what happened on October 17, 1996.
Okay.
I was coming home from work. I was driving down the highway. Everything was wonderful. And I went to get off at my exit, and I went down the exit ramp. And as I started to go down the ramp, I felt like I was being strangled. So the air was being blocked, and I wasn't breathing right. I came down the ramp, I took a right turn, I continued to drive, and the further I drove, the more I felt I was being choked. And I came up to a traffic light, and I just knew I was not going to be able to continue to control the vehicle. And I kind of had my hands on the wheel, and I didn't want to face what I was going to crash into, so I turned my head this way, my hands went that way, and I passed out and my foot went down on the gas pedal. I took a left turn at about 45 miles an hour, and I drove over a car coming the opposite way. It was only a one-lane road going the way I was going and one lane coming the way the person was coming in the opposite direction. When I hit the other vehicle, I had a van. The van went up and flipped over upside down, and I ended up upside down, trapped inside of the van. Fortunately, an off-duty nurse was walking by, and she heard the crash and came running over, and this 14-year-old kid happened to be there, and the nurse screamed to the kid, "Kick that window in." The kid kicked the window in, the nurse reached in, shoved me, and that started my heart beating erratically.
No, you didn't. You heard this after the fact? You had no consciousness at the time? Yeah,
No.
okay.
No, I was passed out.
Okay.
And what then happened was the nurse reached in, shoved me. That started my heart beating again. The paramedics then came, and they cut me out of the van with the jaws of life. They shocked me with a defibrillator machine 6 to 7 times, and they put me in a helicopter, and they med-flighted me by helicopter to Mass General Hospital. Mass General Hospital did angioplastic surgery on me. I was in a coma for 9 days. They didn't know if I was going to come out of the coma, and they didn't know if I did come out of the coma, whether I was going to be a vegetable or not. As it turned out, I was out in the whole process. I didn't know any of this was happening. And I was lying in the bed, and all of a sudden I hear my son talking to me. And my son is at the foot of the bed with the whole rest of my family. And my son is saying, "Don't worry, Dad, you're going to make it. You're going to be all right." And I heard what he said, and that's all I could do is take every ounce of energy in my whole body, and that's all I could do is get my 2 thumbs to go up. But when my thumbs went up, my whole family started to cheer and scream, and because they knew that my brain was working if I could show something. And that says I understood what he said, and that was the beginning of my coming back. What happened was, when I left my physical body in the crash. My physical body's there, I left. I went right out of it. And when I went out of it, I went into the light. Now, the light, we could think of the light being the light, but you could take your mind or your brain's imagination and imagine the brightest light that you could ever imagine, and what I experienced was so far beyond whatever you can imagine that you can't imagine it. The brain can't conceive of what it is. It's that bright. But it wasn't so much the brightness of everything that was so profound as much as it was the feeling. If I took my finger and I put it on your shoulder, it would weigh a little bit, but if my finger weighed 20,000 pounds and I put it on your shoulder, you'd be in awe. And that's what I was in. I was in total awe because I felt I was in the presence of God. I asked, am I in heaven? And I was told that I wasn't going to be going to heaven. I was going to be going back, and I was going to continue to do what I had been doing, only in a much more enhanced manner.
What had you been doing?
Well, I was in the auto parts business for 38 years, and in addition to that, I was assisting other people, and I was doing things to help others. And that was what I was going to continue to do, only in a much more enhanced manner. The next thing I know, I'm looking down at my body. My body's on the operating table. And I'm whirling around in energy form. And it was very uncomfortable because I wasn't really used to being outside of my body in an energy form. I was always used to being inside of my body. And the next thing I knew, I was in my body, and I was in tremendous pain. But the pain actually felt good because it was something that I could relate to, where being outside of my body was something I really had a hard time relating to. Now I'm back in my body, and it's time to come home. I came back, 23% of my heart died in the crash. The heart is a muscle, and if you exercise, you can bring it back. So health became my number one priority, and my heart now is back. It's 100%, and I make it a point to eat altogether differently than I did back then, and I exercise a lot. And life is altogether different now for me than it was before this happened. I take one day at a time. If I wake up, I thank the Lord for allowing me to be here today, and I go about my business. And people in the beginning were saying, oh, don't do that, you can't do this, don't touch that, don't do any of this. It was very difficult. I became a student of death and near death. I felt if I had such an experience, I needed to know more about it. So, as it turned out, I joined the International Association for Near-Death Studies. It's the foremost research and development of death and near-death, and it's all over the world. There was a person that called me one day and asked me if I could help a friend of his, and I said that I would be able to help, and the person came and I did help the person, and this person that called me said that it was years later and the person still talks about me, that I helped him so much all those years ago.
How did you know you could help him?
Well, I have a healing ability, and it was something that I've had for a number of years. I first thought it was my hand that had the ability, but then found later that it really wasn't my hand that was doing things, it was who I am.
Okay.
And I then entered a spiritual path, and I've been on the spiritual path ever since. And the path has led me into a whole bunch of different things all over the world, actually. I thank you for this opportunity to share my experience, and my experience kind of transcends into a whole bunch of other things, which can't obviously be covered in a short amount of time. But one of the things I'd like to share is the reality that a near-death experiencer has a lot that they bring to the table. I've gone to a few different retreats for only people that have died. And as an example, there were 27 of us at the first retreat I went to, and everybody died a different way. Everyone left, and every one of those people was sent back. And the purpose of every one of us being sent back is to serve mankind. Everyone has different abilities. Everyone died differently.
Every single person was sent back to
Yes.
serve mankind. They all got, in one way or another, the same message.
Yes. They all got the
That's
message, you're
reassuring.
going back. And
Okay.
you're all going back, and everyone is going back to help other people. That's
I
the
find
purpose.
that really reassuring.
It was very reassuring. And I just tell you some about just a few of them.
Okay.
One of them was a woman, and she got bit by a cobra snake. And by the time they got her to the hospital, two doctors were there. One doctor said to the other doctor, "There's no point in giving her any anti-venom. She's dead." And the other doctor says, "I'm going to give it to her anyway," and gave it to her. She was sent back.
She came back.
Yeah. Another guy was changing a flat tire.
Oh, boy.
He went to get the spare out of the trunk, and somebody plowed into him at 50 miles an hour, pinned him in between the two cars,
He lived?
broke every bone in his body.
Oh, my God.
He was sent back. Another guy was a disc jockey. He got out of work one day, or one night, whatever, and went into a liquor store, bought a six-pack of beer, came out of the liquor store, and 5 guys with baseball bats attacked him and broke every bone in his body. He was sent back. Last one I'll mention, the guy was a professional deep-sea diver, was a friend of Jacques Cousteau. One day he was out diving alone on a boat called a Zodiac, a one-person boat, and a big wave came and knocked the boat over. And he was in the water, and he was fine being in the water because he was a professional diver, had a life jacket on, and he started to go down, and he ultimately died in the water. He was sent back. Come to find out, his life jacket had dry rot in it. So instead of him coming to the surface, he only went deeper and deeper into the water. That's just some of the people that I was with the first time. And all these people are different. One woman went up, and you have to understand that the feeling is just so unbelievably loving and nurturing, and just, it's beyond belief. It's so euphoric, beyond anything you could ever imagine. There was a woman, and she was told she had to come back. Now, some people are given choice. If you don't want to come back, you don't have to go back. You want to stay, you stay. Others have to go back. I was told I had to go back. Okay, I have to go back, I'm going back. This other woman was told she had to go back. She didn't want to go back. So when she went back, the first thing she did was she went to her medicine cabinet, swallowed a whole bottle full of pills, went back up, and they said, "What are you doing here? You got more work to do back on Earth. We told you can't come up, you got to go back." So she explained that that was it. She never bothered to take any pills after that because there was no point. She can't get out. Not her time to go.
Did you meet anyone that had a choice and decided to come back? Because most people, I would assume.
I did not. Oh, wait a minute. I did. And I did. There was one woman decided to come back because she had younger children, and she felt that she needed to be there for her children, and she wanted to be there for the children, and that she felt that they needed her, and she wanted to be there for them, and she made the choice to come back.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've registered this. I mentioned it once before, but I was at your house waiting on the steps. We had an appointment, and Deb comes to the door and says, "There's been an accident. I've got to go." I said, "Fine," and I left. And I didn't hear what happened to you for a couple of days, and then all of a sudden there was a swell of rumors and many prayers from around the world for you to heal, and then a lot of information about you were conscious, but they didn't know if you'd be okay, and you were hooked up to all these machines, and the drama was quite severe. And then I saw you when you had returned home, not so long after you returned home, and it was amazing to me that you were as good as you were, because I heard you were hooked up to 21 machines, and you were in rehab at the time you're doing physical therapy.
I had 19.
You were functioning.
I had 19 machines hooked up to me.
Oh, jeez. And you also changed the defibrillator
I
process.
changed the life-saving procedure and how they use defibrillator machines across the United States.
Tell the audience about that, because I think that separates you from a lot of the into the light stories that we hear.
Okay, well, the procedure at the time was you never shock anybody more than 3 times. If they don't come back on the 3rd time, that's it, no more. And the machines are so sophisticated that if your physical body won't take the shock, you can hit the button and the machine won't shock you.
Okay.
Now, in reverse of that, if your body will take the shock, they can hit the button and it'll shock you. In my particular case, the person overrode the machine, and he kept hitting it, and I was able to take it, and I came back on the 6th to 7th time.
Oh, wow.
And that had never happened before. My son played basketball, and I was at a basketball game, one of his basketball games, and the fire chief came over to me because his son played ball too on the same team, and says, "Oh, you're not going to believe it, but you're big news." I go, "I'm big news? Why am I big news?" He says, "Oh, you've changed the life-saving procedure." And
That's how you found out?
Yeah, the fire chief told me. He says, "Yeah,
Wow.
you changed the procedure." Boy, that's really something.
Did you ever talk to the person who shocked you? Because I'm wondering what his impetus was for keeping going.
I can only tell you this. They sent out a paramedic truck,
Okay.
and that's what I went away in, the paramedic truck. So now they saved my life, and that's the end of it. And what happened was,
That's the beginning of it.
about a month later, my son was playing basketball. I was working. I had to work, and I got home from work. I had to go to his game. I didn't eat. It was cold. After the game was over, I went to a restaurant, and we're in the restaurant, and I'm sitting in the restaurant, and it was a Chinese restaurant. I ordered an appetizer. I eat the appetizer. The next thing you know, the main course comes, and all of a sudden, I fall out of the seat, and I pass out on the floor. I pass out on the floor. Next thing you know, they call right away. They call an ambulance. The paramedics come. Now they take me and they put me in the back of the ambulance, and the paramedics say, "Are you on any medication?" I says, "Yes, I'm on this, I'm on that." And they go, "Oh." I said, "I had a heart attack a month ago." And the guy looks at me, 2 of them look at me and goes, "What? That's you? We didn't know if you made it."
I never heard this story before.
They didn't know if I made it or not. That's all
That's a blessing.
Yeah, so I got 2 of them that were...
How bizarre.
Yeah, so it's like, "Yeah, it's me, I'm all right."
You have a story to tell, Joe.
Yeah, so that was that part of the story.
So it seems to me that the recollection, the full recollection, took a while to happen for you. Is that true, or is that how I perceive it?
Well, let's put it this way. I didn't have the full recollection. Some of it I had blocked out, but I didn't really know I had known I had blocked it out. I started to tell about a man that wanted to know if I could help a person, and I did. And the guy sent me a letter one day. In the letter, he said he happened to be on the board of directors of the International Association for Near-Death Studies, and he was wondering if I would entertain a few possibilities. One would be speaking at their national convention in Hawaii. One would be speaking in their local chapter in Swedenborg Chapel in Cambridge, and another would be to be interviewed. And I was led to do the 2 speaking engagements. So I said I'd be glad to do the speaking engagement in Cambridge and also in Hawaii. I'm not really up for the interview, so let's forget the interview. So he said, "Well, if you want to do the one in Hawaii, you're going to have to write an essay. And we have a board of directors. It'll go before the board of directors, and they'll choose. If they choose yours, then you'll get to be a speaker." I said, "Oh, okay." So I said to my wife, "So much for that idea.
See that coming.
I'm not going to be writing an essay." And then I hear, "Oh, yes, you are." So I guess I'm going to write an essay. So
And you heard from, just to clarify?
From who I am.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to write this essay. So I said, "How about if I speak it?" And my wife maybe could you please, key it in? So she wrote it, I spoke it, she wrote it, we emailed it off, and don't you know, they chose it. And I then had to go and speak for an hour in front of a lot of professional people, medical doctors, psychiatrists, hospice workers, and a bunch of other people that study the phenomenon of death and near death. So, I don't know, we've had maybe a month before it was time to go, and my wife is saying, you better write down, you better start writing quick. If you're going to be there and you're going to have to talk for a whole hour, you better get it on paper. I goes, oh, sure, I'll get it on paper, all right. Same as I got it on paper
All the
on
other
the
times.
essay, yeah. So sure enough, there was nothing went on the paper. And I got up, and they introduced me, and I got up, and I did what I did. And the hour went, everything went off the way it needed to, everything was fine. And it was a wonderful experience. I very much enjoyed it. And that was what happened there. And there also, they have a lot of world-renowned speakers that come in that have written all kinds of books or that are doing all kinds of research on death and near death. And got to meet some real fascinating individuals.
I bet.
Yeah, very, very much so. It was a real joy. And I was doing that once a year for 2 or 3 times, and then felt that I got everything that I needed to get from it, and that I was adjusted. And I say adjusted. A lot of people have a near-death experience and radically changes their life. The divorce rate is 85%, people that have had a near-death experience, and marriages don't do so well afterwards because the people are just happy to be alive. They're not looking to get back up on the horse and go, ride it.
So you're saying they radically changed so much.
They radically changed. If the man was the one that had the experience, they don't want to go back to work, or they're afraid, or not that they're afraid. When you die, you lose all your fear of everything. But if they get a pain in their chest, all of a sudden, they're not going to go be looking to go run or do other things. So a lot of people, it changes them radically. And if a person's not going to produce, where's the money going to come that's going to support? So a lot of people end up divorced. And
I find you and Debbie closer than ever. It was a real bonding.
We are, but I'm different than most.
I know.
I was in business for myself, and
that's not what makes you different.
What makes me different? Yeah, you get bent and twisted and pulled and twisted again and pushed, and when you get knocked to the ground and you're in business for yourself, you get back up and you fight. So that's what has to happen, and that's what I did. So I'm still living one day at a time. I'm still trusting. I'm still trying to enjoy whatever there is to enjoy. But I have a different perspective. I can see, and millions of people will give anything to be able to see. They're blind. And I can hear. Millions of people will give anything to be able to hear. They're deaf. And I'm walking. Millions of people will give anything to be able to walk. They're crippled or they have other problems. So, from my perspective, I can see, I can hear, and I'm walking. I got no problem. Whatever happens, bring it. And that's how it needs to be for me.
What do you want the audience to know about death?
I want the audience to know that there is no death. You don't die. Believe me, you do not die. You have a physical form. That's your vehicle. And that's what you're carrying through this life. I believe in reincarnation. I believe that the heart has all of the memory of everything. And it's all inside of you. And I believe that it's a journey to get deeply into your heart. Most of us don't get a chance to do anything like that. When you face death and you come out the other side, everything is different. Everything is changed. And you're much more got to get comfortable within yourself, because everything starts from within. In order for me to be happy with my wife, first I got to be happy with myself. And it takes work. And I've done a lot of it. And as a result of doing a lot of work, I wanted to bring who I am through me in a conscious way. And it takes a lot of years of practice to kind of get more and more in tune with who you truly are, and also to prove yourself in a proper way, so that who you are maybe wants to do more in the world to help other people, and who I am wants to help everyone in this world.
So that languaging is might be a little complex for the audience to understand. So it's a good segue. Our next session, our next show, is going to be Joel using his talents, healing others. And what I've noticed is, since you've come back from your heart attack, your abilities seem to be supercharged. I'm going to use the word supercharged. I don't know what word you'd use, but more effective, more precise, more long-lasting. And so I invite people to come to the next show, and I just want to give you an opportunity. Any closing words before we say goodbye to episode 3?
Everybody has a process. Everybody is here for a whole bunch of different reasons. Trust in your process. Try and go with the flow. Your brain is your judgment, and your heart is your truth. So it's not so much important what you think as much as it is what you feel. So think whatever you want to think, and after you think it, take it to your heart and see what you feel about it. And if your heart's in agreement, then go for it or don't go for it. But if your heart's not in agreement, try and let your brain bow to your heart's desire. If you do, you'll be whole. And that's the first step in being in the world with other people. In order to be happy with others, first you got to be happy with yourself. If I please Leslie and I don't please myself, I'm fractured. She's happy, but I'm not. So please yourself. That's the answer.
Great words. Great words to close the show by. I'd like to thank everybody for taking a look at Half an Hour with Leslie and sharing the time with us. See you next time.
Bye.